All right. Good morning. Good morning. Little Thursday AM basketball. I don't get to say this too often, so we're going to enjoy it here. It is time to tip off March Madness. And here at Stochastic, we got you covered. A little live before lock action, 16 games. We're going to break down each and every one of them. I am Ben Raza. Who better to break down these games than the man himself, Matt Gajewski? Of course, he joins me. It's your Christmas morning, just like mine. I know you're excited for these games.
Yeah, absolutely. Just quick thoughts. I think the field this year, a little more parity than normal. So some of the seeds that are maybe a little lopsided in these games, I think they might be a little more competitive than usual. So I'm pumped, man.
It's going to be great. Obviously, we do have some lopsided spreads. We've got some big totals, some small totals. We're going to get into everything. We're going to talk about what's going on in the industry, some of the tools, and of course, our March Madness package. If you just joined us for the first time, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. But we got 16 games. We got an hour. We're going to be just fine. We're professionals. We do this in college football. We run through these games at light speed. Well, let's dive into it. We're ready to rock. I see a lot of people in chat as well. And we'll get started with the first game up. It's going to tip off at 12:15. We've got West Virginia, slight favorite over Maryland, a 137.5 point total, an 8-9 game. They will be sacrificed to Bama in the future, but we don't need to talk about that here. Break down these teams. You've mentioned West Virginia to me in our previews with Stevenson and whatnot. How do you go about starting with the West Virginia side?
I think it's going to be a slightly more contrarian side, a team I'll look at for tournaments more than anything else. They have a usage dominator in Eric Stevenson. For reference, he's taking about 30% of the shots in their last 3 games. So anytime you have a guy like that who has a massive shot rate, I think he's live for GPPs. But he's also in a price range at 8,500 on DraftKings, where I'm just trying to prioritize forwards, get some of the big studs we have on the slate, and get that double-double equity, which Stevenson doesn't really have unless he gets like a crazy assist game. So he's kind of a guy that's a little priced out for me. Trey Mitchell, a little more affordable, certainly has the double-double equity. The only thing that's really wrong with him is the potential for fouls. That has been an issue with him at points in his career. And then Kedrian Johnson, Emmett Matthews kind of round out their big 4. They'll rotate that point guard position a little bit. I think they're all live for tournaments here for the West Virginia side. Maryland is where we can have, I think, a little more of a conversation. They have a usage dominator themselves in Jameer Young, and he actually has better rates, especially recently compared to Eric Stevenson. He's a guy that actually does have rebound equity, about a 19% rebound rate last 3. He's cheaper than Stevenson too. You also have Dante Scott, egregiously priced. He'll play 30 plus minutes in competitive games. 6,200 is kind of laughable for him. Nearly 20% shot rate, rebound rate, and assist rate last 3. And last guy to mention here, I think, is Don Carey, 4,200, plays 30 minutes. He's actually shooting the ball and a little more involved than normal. But I think for him, it's just kind of a one-off off the other value plays. And I'm probably trying to limit this to 1 or 2 guys from this game.
Couple quick questions, because again, we got a ton of games to get to. When you looked at the pricing, did you find it particularly soft, particularly tight, or just kind of normal?
It's tight.
Okay.
More of the injuries are on tomorrow's slate and the value, I think. We have a couple injury concerns, but it's largely guys I think that are going to play through it. So there's not too much value. So guys like Don Carey are in play.
Yeah, possibly some value there, as you mentioned. And then in terms of, are you looking to game stack? I know this isn't probably the game, but like, how do you go about that for people who maybe are diving into the college basketball waters for the first time?
Yeah, some game stacks. And from that, it's not going to be like full onslaught. Just with 16 games, you're dealing with a lot of opportunity cost. But for reference, in a game like Utah State, Missouri, that we'll get to in a little bit with like a 155 total, definitely want pieces of that game, pieces from both sides, and comfortable with 3 or 4 players from games like that. This one with a 137 total, I'm trying to limit it a little more.
Anything else from this game?
I think we're good.
Furman and Virginia, 6-point spread here, 131.5. Obviously on the betting side, if you've been over at Odd Chopper, where we do all our betting work, you know that I'm really high on Furman, as are a lot of people at this point, but they are the underdog. And let's start with them. They've got some real scorers in Slauson and Bothwell, but they're going up against the defense that they don't see too often. Are these guys in play at, basically around 8K price tags?
For me, they're not. I don't have much Furman at all. And it's no slight to them. I love Furman, more of like a betting team, in my opinion. Yeah. For DFS specifically, anytime you face Virginia, you need to be careful. The style of offense and defense, for that matter, that's just their team stylistically limits possessions to such a degree where you're dealing with a lot of capped upside. And especially for these guys like Bothwell, Slauson, I'd rather either go down and play guys like Dante Scott or find the extra salary to play some of the studs in other games. So no slight to them, but just a really tough game environment. And the same thing goes for the Virginia side, like Beekman, Kihei Clark, even Jaden Gardner. If I was playing one, it'd probably be Gardner for the double-double equity. But even with that, you're probably looking at like a good 30 points and not much of a ceiling, not much of a floor below that. The range of outcomes is pretty narrow for this whole game for DFS.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Virginia's 360th in tempo per KenPom. The only thing I wanted to ask you, and we've seen a couple games with it, with Virginia, particularly their front court, Vanderplas breaks a hand. Is there anybody there that has now, kind of launched themselves into relevancy, or did everyone just pick up a few extra, stat statistics?
Yeah, it's exactly that. They replaced him by committee. Frustrating, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. Again, when you look at these totals, this one is towards the bottom of most of the games, so I don't think there's really anything else to say. I'll just ask you this. Favorite play from this game?
Gardner.
Or Furman, but I respect it. All right. We're getting to a real good game now. We kind of had two games to get us started. Utah State and Missouri, competitive spread, 155.5 point total. These teams it's contrasting styles, but at the same time, some of the things in terms of high-powered offense, Missouri and their three-point shooting, just ridiculous. Start on the Utah State side, though. You've got guys pretty moderately priced, Ashworth, Funk, guys like this. How do they filter in to your priority in terms of lineup construction?
Yeah, good Vegas total, good pace in this game. And then what each team does well offensively, the other team sucks at on defense. So for DFS, it's the perfect recipe for a game that you could potentially game stack. These are two of the higher team totals on the board. For Utah State, I think you start with Ashworth. He's their usage leader, over a 20% shot rate and assist rate for him. He doesn't really capitalize on that Missouri weakness, which is on the interior, but I'm not really too worried about that with the team total. His price is more than comfortable to get to. The other guards are actually pretty cheap as well. Max Shulga and Sean Bairstow, no issues with either of them. And Bairstow kind of plays like that 3 where he does have the ability to win inside. He's been super involved lately, of course. His rates last 3 are kind of crazy, which makes him an affordable game stack piece that I like getting to. But the guy that really exploits the interior is Taylor Funk, and I don't think he's going to come with a lot of ownership. He's hard to project because he can't keep his hands to himself. He either plays 39 minutes or 20 because he's fouling out, which is referenced in the last 3 games. But the upside for him, shot rate, rebound rate, is through the roof in a slate like this, and I don't think people are going to play him. So love him for GPPs. The Missouri side, I think, is kind of straightforward. You have the 2 studs in Kobe Brown, Demoy Hodge, but DeAndre Golston has played a ton of minutes recently just due to injury. Isaiah Mosley not with the team. So you've now seen Golston pick up 30-plus minutes routinely. His shot rate is 22% in the last 3 games. And then his rebound and assist rate are pretty solid too. So you have peripheral upside. He projects as probably the single best value play on the slate.
So looking at this, I kind of wanted to ask you in terms of, are you limiting I know this is a really good game to stack, but say you go to, a guy like Taylor Funk. How many more Utah State players are you comfortable having in that same lineup? Is it a max of 2? Is there like 3? And then, on the other side, a couple Missouri Tigers? What do you do there?
Yeah, I don't want any more than 2 really in any game, just because there are other good totals and you take on opportunity cost, but no issues with 2 Utah State or 2 Missouri, especially the Missouri, because you have that value piece in Golston. So they cannibalize each other a little less.
Any interest in a guy like Nick Honor and Diarra, some of the pay down options, or are there just other cheapies that we can get to in other games?
Nick Honor's fine. He's a little more of a win sprinter than Golston, but Golston's going to be significantly more owned. And Honor, pretty decent assist rate. I wish he took a little more shots, but he's also slightly cheaper. No issues with him. I don't think I'm going to get any deeper than that, though.
When you look at, and again, we've got 16 games, so you can be very, very selective, but are these guys, someone like Golston in particular, are they cash viable, or are you still talking more in a tournament setting?
Golston's cash viable without a doubt. And then I think, honestly, it's probably Ashworth for cash on Utah State, but if you can't quite find the salary, I'm okay with Bairstow and Shulga too. They're sort of like your last man in if you follow that mantra, but I have really highly projected lineups with essentially any of those 3. You can kind of mix and match.
Yeah, this is obviously one of the best games. Don't be afraid to mix and match. You mentioned Funk, stay out of foul trouble, keep your hands to yourself. Well said. You look at the game log. That tells a story. 22 and then 39 minutes. Just ridiculous. I want to just backtrack for 1 second. We did have a question from John about Furman, one of their other shooters in Pegas. I'm probably butchering his name. Do you have any interest there, or is it just still that environment with the pace?
He has a pretty good projection, but again, more of a cash play. And even then, I'm still probably trying to play guys like Golston instead. And for tournaments, even though he projects well, you just have to know going into that there's very little volatility in that projection, unless he were to foul or something. But like, there's not a huge ceiling beyond that projection. The range of outcomes is so narrow that it's like, I don't think he's live to drop a 40 burger. Whereas like his median 25, he's probably going to be around there most of the time. So cash, pretty safe. Tournaments, just don't want any piece of Furman with the limited ceiling.
We go to the first of a couple games. We got a lot of 16s. Howard and Kansas. It's 23-point spread, 145.5. I will say, of the 16s, Howard, they do some things. They can shoot the ball a little bit. And I want to kind of ask you, does that translate to DFS viability? Because they're going to get crushed most likely. But do they have some guys on offense that you think belong in the player pool?
I think there's some guys that belong in the player pool because of the lack of value. We have no injuries really, or at least not ones we're expecting. So in a tightly priced situation without injuries, you're getting some of these really bad teams that pop for value just because you'll have guys that play 30 minutes, even though they're going to get crushed. So Shai Odom and Marcus Dockery are the two guys that pop here. This is really thin value though. Shai Odom's probably going to be a little more owned than Dockery. His minutes, just for reference, last 3 games have been 23, 27, 18. You're dealing with real volatile players here. So I have a little bit of both these players, but I'm trying to intentionally come in underweight on the field. They project well, but it's pretty fragile.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about, they could be, though they probably will be launching. I mean, 23 points is bad, but I still expect. I mean, are you projecting when you have a game like this? Because we have a couple. I guess it's easier to get to it now than when we talk about Bama. When you're powering the projections, you've got all our usage data. It's all part of the March Madness package, which we'll talk about. Do you budget guys on Howard for their full allotment of minutes in potentially a beatdown, or do you ease off that?
Yeah, this is their Super Bowl. Generally in these blowouts, you don't see teams like Howard ease off the minutes. But on the other side, you certainly will see Kansas do that.
Yeah. And let's talk about Kansas. Again, they're the champs. They're coming in. Self should be okay. They've got Wilson. So I want to isolate him because he's $9,300. There are a couple guys north of 10K, but he's up there. He's amongst the top 10 most expensive guys. Is that a spend that you're looking to make room for?
I have a little bit of him. I believe that I'll be under the field on him just because he projects well. And he actually projects a little bit better across other projection sources, which I don't agree with. For reference, he's played 39, 36, and 38 minutes in the last 3 games. I think his projection should be closer to 32 as a 22-point favorite. I don't see any way he hits like 38 minutes today. And with that said, you're probably going to run out to like 30 DK points or fantasy points in the first half, looking real good. Kansas might have like a 15-point lead. And then you'll look at the box score at the end of the game and be like, oh, Wilson only finished with 40 points. What happened in the second half? And you realize he played 4 minutes. So I think you're dealing with a limited ceiling on some of the studs today just because of their matchup. And what you really need if you target Kansas is you need Howard to keep this game within the point spread. Like this needs to be a 12 to 15-point game, not a 22-point contest. So I have a little bit of Wilson just in the instance that Howard would give him a little more of a game than we're expecting. But if it plays to the spread, which is the most likely outcome, I don't think he has a minute ceiling.
What do you make for the rest of, is that applicable to Grady Dick, to McCullough, to like all these other guys? How do you go about the rest of the Jayhawks?
For the rest of them, they're a little cheaper, so they don't quite need as much to pay off value or hit that ceiling on a per dollar basis, but they still deal with the same problems. Grady Dick's probably not going to see 37 minutes today. McCullough's injured. He's a player I certainly don't think is going to see that. He says he's fully healthy now. I find it hard to believe you fully recover from back spasms in 5 days, but I'm not a doctor. I don't know what McCullough's status is. Seems like a situation where you have the luxury of being cautious with him. But again, I don't know. And then this team only has 3 good players. So I don't think you really want to get to DeJuan Harris or KJ Adams to begin with. Maybe like if you want to take a contrarian Yusufu, who's been the beneficiary of the McCullough injury, that's something you could do. But I don't have a ton of interest in Kansas outside like a Jalen Wilson in a handful of lineups.
Yeah, it's fun, and that's what we get with 16 games and a 16-1, 145.5. It doesn't always yield a ton of plays. I will say, and we're going to move to the next game in a second, but one other way, depending on where you live, of course, to possibly get exposure to games like this is in the betting markets. And if you have college basketball props as well, that is one area to do it. I do want to just give a quick shout out to OddsShopper and OddsShopper Premium. If you're not over there and you're in a state, there's a little betting, you should absolutely go check that out. The link is in the description of this video. I know Mike can throw it in chat for us as well. And if you're unfamiliar with it, we're talking about a market-based approach. It's an easy way to make profitable bets. We do all the work for you. We scan the boards. We find the odds. Easy way to bet. We've got everything from NBA to NHL to college basketball. And the best part about it, you're saying this sounds interesting, but I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Come in for the week for free, 100% free. You'll get the first, the second round, NBA, NHL. Just click the link in the description. You're in a second. Take advantage of that and make some money if you're in a legal betting state. A great opportunity to do just that. Now, everything we just talked about I want to ask you, is it applicable to the next game? And that's Texas A&M Corpus Christi, who we've seen. The Islanders already won a game against SEMO. They're taking on Bama, though. This is another gigantic spread, 23.5 points, 154.5. Talk to me about this team. Can we get any value from the 16 seed here?
We can. This team actually projects really well. Not any fault of their own, I guess, but they lost Murdix, their best player. So sometimes when you see this, the platforms are slow to raise the prices of the beneficiaries. You have players like Isaac Mushila, Trevian Tennyson, DeLazarus Keys, Jalen Jackson, Simeon Fryer, Ross Williams. These guys are all playing 25 to 35 minutes, give or take. And some of these guys are like 3.6K, 3.8K, and they're going to play 32 minutes, 35 minutes. So you're kind of balancing, all right, does this team actually get to their team total, which is 65? It's a good team total. It's better than some of the, Big Ten teams on this slate. Or does Alabama just kill them? So the way I'm approaching this is I made a rule in Fantasy Cruncher to limit one Texas A&M Corpus Christi player per lineup. But other than that, I'm not limiting these guys just because their minutes just don't line up with their prices.
Is part of that because of Murdix being out and they just haven't been able to deal with that? Because he was a key part of this team.
He's their best player by far. And yes, that's the reason.
Okay. And last question before we move to the Bama side. If you play these guys, are you more likely to put someone on the other side of the game in terms of Alabama guys?
Yeah, there's a couple Bama value guys that project fairly well, even considering the minute restrictions. So got a decent amount of this game. Bama has the highest team total on the board. You're just kind of juggling how many minutes do these guys play. But at a certain price point, even 20 minutes, these Bama players can hit value.
Talk to me about the Bama side then. Floor is yours, Brandon Miller and co.
I think the players that can hit value are the ancillary players. So Brandon Miller, same logic as Jalen Wilson. Even a guy like Javon Quinterly and Noah Clowney for that matter, they're a bit expensive for my liking, considering I think they're capped at like 30 minutes today. But you go down and you get a guy like Charles Bediako at 4,800. He's typically playing like 24 to 26 minutes a game. That's what I expect from him here. He's not a player that really has a minute ceiling, but does he need it at 4,800? He has solid rates, good rebound rate, does have a fouling risk. I don't think that's a huge risk in this particular game. So he stands out as a value play. And Bama, we've seen them in these blowouts all season long. We've seen them extend their bench. If you want to take shots on Rylan Griffin, Noah Gurley at the minimum price, I'm expecting around 20 minutes for some of those guys. Like you're debating, would I rather play a Shai Odom at 4,300 or would I rather just save the extra $1,000 and play a Rylan Griffin that maybe will get you an extra stud? I'm doing that in some lineups today. It's going to be a little gross and it needs to play to the spread for that to happen. Likewise, if you're playing Brandon Miller, like you need Corpus Christi to keep this closer than the spread. So these are the kind of things you need to think about when you're taking stabs on the Bama guys, the Kansas guys, the Houston guys.
Yeah, that's kind of what and it sounds like that's what you're alluding to. If you play the flat min guys on Alabama, I assume you're drawing to specific game scripts in terms of how their minutes go. Like they're not getting those minutes in every scenario. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think they will get the minutes if it plays to the spread. But if Texas A&M keeps it closer, then you'll see, like, we'll use Ryland Griffin, for example. If Christi keeps this to a 10-point game, well within the spread, he's playing 9 minutes. But if it plays to the spread of 24.5, he's going to play 15 to 20.
Yeah, and that can be the difference again to open it up. And you do have Miller north of 10K, so he's going to need a mammoth game, and obviously he can do just that. He gets the opportunities. College, talk about contrasting styles. Our 6th game here, College of Charleston, a sneaky and dangerous 12, like most of them are, against San Diego State, a 141.5. But man, College of Charleston is driving most of that because they're a team that wants to play crazy fast. They want to shoot the ball, offense. It's not the most efficient offense out there, and they're taking on a San Diego State team that is more predicated certainly on defense, not Virginia slow, but a slow tempo nonetheless. When you see contrasting styles, how do you break down a game like this?
I default more so to the betting lines. Honestly, it came in a little higher than I thought.
So did I.
Generally speaking, the slower team has an easier time controlling pace. You know, they can walk the ball up the court. A team that wants to run can't force them to play any faster. So obviously they'll meet in the middle to some degree, but 142 total is one we should still be looking at based on what Vegas is telling us. So for Charleston, they're a really difficult team for me to peg. You have an incredibly difficult defense on the other side. The only redeeming quality here with the San Diego State defense, I suppose, is they have been a little susceptible inside. So a guy like Ante Brzovic is someone that could maybe take advantage of that 20% shot rate and rebound rate last 3. But he's also 7,400. You know, like, do I want to play Brzovic or do I want to play like Marcus Carr? So by default, I'm kind of getting away from him. They also have Rain Smith at 4,400. He's basically just a pure shooter. That's working right into the teeth of the San Diego State defense. So he projects kind of well, but also a player I'm probably going to come in a little under the field on. That's where I'm sitting right now. I'm debating whether to change that, but I don't think I will. Same thing goes for Jalen Scott. He's just a wind sprinter. So Charleston's not a team I have much of. And then San Diego State, man, they run a 9-man rotation. And unlike normal teams where your starters maybe get a few more minutes than your bench players, this is an exaggeration, but it's not really that much of an exaggeration. It's like 20 minutes, 25 minutes across the board for all 9 guys.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, Bradley's their alpha, and is he really an alpha? He averages 12, 13 points a game. It's rough.
Within the last 3 games, they've had one player touch 30 minutes. In all 3 of the games, one instance of a 30-minute guy. That was Lamont Butler. If I were to play one, it's him. He plays a decent amount of minutes, and his rates are okay, and his price matches up at 4,600. But even there, be careful with him. Essentially, my approach with all the value guys is I'm kind of spraying and praying. I do not want to have like 100% of one of these value guys in my lineup. So if I'm running multiple, which I am, I want to be a little more overweight on the studs and then rotate the value to kind of mitigate some of that risk.
Last thing in this game, I just wanted to ask you, this Brzovic character, you know, in the last couple games, competitive games, he pumped up the minutes a little, but this is a guy that's playing like, 20 minutes a game. Now, they crushed a lot of those teams. Do you think in a tournament setting he can push for more minutes, or are we going to have to get there in the low 20s in terms of minutes?
Yeah, so they play in a terrible conference.
Yes, they do.
They beat the snot out of everybody. In their last 2 games, both 5-point margin of victories, 27 and 30 minutes, no foul trouble. I think his projection should be 29 to 30 minutes, which is where we have him, and he doesn't pop in terms of value. Okay. It's literally just a matchup exploitation. So I think I'm probably going to stay away just with the better options in the price range.
Fair enough. Yeah, they do. I mean, I've seen that conference play. It's a tough scene out there. It should have been Towson. That's a show for another time, friends. All right. Princeton and Arizona. Can they shock the world? A 15 versus a 2. It's not going to be, it's not in the 23.5 point bucket, but it's a sizable spread. 14.5, 15 is out there. 153.5 point total. So healthy. Let's start with the Ivy League champs. They've got a dude on the inside, no doubt about it. He's almost $9,000 though. Talk to me about him. Talk to me about Tosan, who can he go up against Arizona's bigs and be effective?
I think it's a bit of a stretch. Brutal matchup for them. A mid-major team driven by an elite post player. Going up against Tubelis and Balo, you couldn't draw up a worse matchup for him in round 1. With that said, he plays every minute. and he's not a big fouler, so that's not a huge risk for him here. With that said, I mean, you're still debating, do I want to play him or Tubelis or Chris Murray or Filipkowski? I'd rather play the studs with upside than Tosan. So I don't have any of him. I don't have anybody on Princeton. It's no real slight to them as players. I think they're somewhat live in this game, actually. But with so much usage coming through Tosan, all the other guys are a bit expensive for me. And then if I don't want to play Tosan, you're kind of just priced out of the rest of the team.
Yeah, a guy like Caden Pierce, he's almost tipping to 8K here. Now he's been living really well with the double lately, but is that just a price point issue?
Just a price point issue, and he's their other forward. He's gone straight into the teeth of that Arizona matchup as well.
On the other side, Tubelis, again, serious business with the price point, nearly $10,000. What do we do with that? I mean, is that the type of guy in terms of a spend? You know, you're comparing that against Miller and some of these other guys. How does he fall in the priority order up top?
He's a bit higher for me. I like Tubelis a lot. Taking a bit of a stand on him, I think I'll come in overweight. With this game, it's 14.5 points instead of 24.5 points. So immediately you're dealing with closer margins. The chance Tubelis plays 28 minutes is a little lower than a guy like Brandon Miller. Like Tubelis might actually play 33, 35 minutes here. In their last 3 games, their margin of victories were 2 points, 19 points, and 11 points. He played 33, 37, and 35 minutes. They're using him a ton. And working in his favor, Omar Ballo has a broken hand. He's playing through it. This must not be a shooting hand. Like, I don't understand where the break is and how this works, but Omar Ballo is going to play. I don't know if that limits him or affects him in any degree. Apparently it must not, but just a little tidbit to know there. Tubelis is a walking double-double, 24% shot rate, 30% rebound rate, some of the best rates in the country. I'm not really worried about the defense on the other side. For everything Princeton does well, Tosan on the interior is great, but they're still outside the top 50 in interior defense.
Yeah, Ballo broke apparently his left hand. He couldn't shoot. I can't tell with his free throws. Maybe that improves it because
that's the funniest thing. This thing has an incredible effective field goal percentage, and they're outside the top 200 in free throws, and you're like, oh, it's Omar Ballo free throws that are really bringing them down here.
Yeah, it's a tough scene. Before we move to the next game, though, I want to ask you about just a lot of bodies with Ramey and Larson and Christi. Are these guys just, there's too many of them, or is there someone in that backcourt that maybe consolidates? 30 minutes isn't out of the realm for any of them. Is the usage just too low, though?
Yeah, it is for me. You have a weird situation where Christi suffered a shoulder injury in the conference tournament, and they eased off his minutes. He's now playing like upper 20s, low 30s. And the person that benefited most was Courtney Ramey. So I think if you want to take a stab on one, it's probably Ramey. I'm not confident Christi sees like the elite minutes we used to see. And if Christi doesn't have those minutes, you can't play him just because he's so assist reliant. He needs like full max minutes to pay off salary. Kylan Boswell at 3,900 is somebody you could use a la like a Rylan Griffin. He already plays 20 minutes per game. And, if this gets above the spread, he could see 22, 23 minutes. So Boswell firmly in that GPP punt option category, but don't love it. Would rather play the other guys. The main player I'm isolating from this game is Tubelis.
Illinois and Arkansas, another 8-9. Arkansas 1.5 point favorite, 144.5 point total. Interesting game. Shannon and Mayer, these guys come in, they try to gel from the transfer portal. Arkansas's got pros all over the place. A lot of talent in this game, but when you break it down from a DFS perspective, who are the names that are at the top of the list?
First of all, love this game for tournaments. Going to go under owned. It's priced in a weird spot where you're kind of in between the elite studs and in between that mid-range value. So players like Terrence Shannon are getting looked over. Elite usage from Shannon, full maximum minutes. And his projection kind of dipped a little bit due to the tournament injury he suffered. Right before the tournament, he was injured. And that also kind of made Matt Mayer a little bit overpriced. Matt Mayer drove up all the way to like 8,500 when Terrence Shannon was out. They've used him in like upper 20s, low 30s in minutes prior. So I'm a little worried that those minutes come down. And they also had Jaden Epps return. He was the point guard for this team prior to his own injury. First game back was the last game Illinois played. He's now had about another week to recover. I think that muddles minutes for the Melendezes, the Goodies, the Harrises, even maybe, players like Matthew Mayer. I think it could muddle minutes for some of the other players that aren't just the elite usage guys. The last player to mention from Illinois is Coleman Hawkins. Now, he's played every single minute regardless because he's so important to that front court. His usage isn't great, but it's consistent across the board, like a 15% shot rate, 15% rebound rate, 32% assist rate. He has an awesome floor. And then if you run into a rogue shooting game where he hits the shots or he takes a few more, there's awesome leverage to be had with him. And then on the Arkansas side, you kind of look at the same thing. There's a ton of leverage here. They essentially play like a six-man rotation. Among their guards, you've got Rick Council, Anthony Black, Devo Davis, and Nick Smith. Nick Smith has a 32% shot rate in the last 3 games. He's involved peripherally, over a 30% assist rate. He doesn't quite project as well as some of the other players in this range. A lot of that goes to like Marcus Carr for Texas. But Nick Smith is an awesome tournament pivot play here. Devo Davis has played 37, 40, and 20 minutes in the last couple games. And then Rick Council and Anthony Black are pretty good GPP plays as well. I stay away from the forwards. It's a complete merry-go-round minute-wise. But I love the Arkansas guards as leverage. I love Shannon and Hawkins in particular and Illinois' leverage. If you're playing big tournaments, these guys are going to come in micro-owned.
This is a good game. I totally agree. You mentioned it. And I will say, for me, just on the betting side, I like Arkansas in this game. I think too much talent. I know they can't shoot at all, but they can create their own shot. They can get in transition. Not overly sold on Illinois. I'm going to lay the points with Arkansas here. And it is a perfect time for me to say this. And it's only, I know it's not everyone, me included, sadly, but if you are in Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, or Colorado, Bet365, it's on the screen, is giving you $365 if you bet $1 when you sign up. So all you have to do, the link is below. If you're in one of those states, I mean, it doesn't get better than that. You deposit $10, you bet a single dollar, and you're instantly credited with $365 in bet credits. I mean, that's it. Do that if you're there. If you're lucky enough to be in one of those states, it is easy enough. Obviously, you got to be in those states. Play responsive. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Auburn and Iowa, another, I mean, it's the same thing. 8-9s, pseudo pick'ems, 151. Normally people say strength on strength. It's also weakness on weakness because Auburn's offense is atrocious. Iowa's defense is non-existent. What do we do here?
Great game to target for DFS, similar to the one we just saw, and I don't think it's going to be owned. I'll start, like, these are two of the best games. Essentially the 8-9s on both sides of the bracket today have awesome leverage potential. This one is a 152 total. For Auburn, Janai Broome is their usage leader. He plays in the interior. The risks are he never has a minute ceiling. You're looking at a mean median projection around 30 minutes with very little wiggle room, even when, games are tight. They just don't use him a ton. With that said, he draws the cupcake matchup that is the Iowa interior. They are horrific inside, play absolutely no defense. So, I took some of his props, like points, rebounds, assists towards the over, but I'm still a little worried about the overall ceiling with him in the same price range as Tubelis and Filipkowski and Chris Murray on the other side. Wendell Green, pure shooter. He's a dwarf out there, so there's absolutely no double-double upside. I'd rather play some of the other guys we mentioned. Flanagan and Williams are interesting. Don't see a ton of upside with them with so much usage coming through Broome. And then Katie Johnson, 5K is a decent price. Wish he was below 5K, but he's played 29, 16, and 36 minutes. So if you run into like a 36-minute game with KD, could be an awesome situation here. I'm kind of torn because this Auburn team is horrible on offense, and they have a great offense on the other side in Iowa, who's top 50 in the country. Auburn's actually 4-11 against top 50 offenses this year. So when teams get out to track meets with Auburn sometimes has trouble keeping up because of how bad their own offense is, even though they're given the opportunities. I don't know. I'm wrestling with Auburn right now.
Yeah, it is just brutal. And then on the other side, I mean, we've seen Iowa come back from the dead during the year. We've seen Iowa do all sorts of things in games. They can get crazy hot. They got Murray on the inside. Again, I know I've said it a lot already. He's $9,400. So it's him or Wilson, him or Tubelis, him or Miller. Where does he fall on that list of players at the top?
He's high for me. There's no minute restrictions for him. He's not a fouler. He's played 38, 37, and 32 minutes last 3 games. It's a 1.5 point spread, 1 point spread in some spots. So basically the same usage, maybe a little worse usage than like Miller and Tubelis, but none of the minute risk. So I think safety's here, ceiling's here. He's solid. Rebracha has an awesome ceiling too, complete double-double upside. 7,300 is a nice price, sort of a consolation prize if you can't get yourself to Murray. I'm fine with Rebracha And even Tony Perkins has been super involved recently. It's kind of a three-headed rotation between these three guys, but all of the usage is coming through them.
Anything else from this game?
Pat McCaffrey projects okay. He's 4,800. He's a win sprinter. I would rather play other value plays, not much.
We did have a question quickly from chat for you. A couple of like the 3K punts, Gurley or Nwuba. I know we didn't get to UCLA yet. Do you have a lean between those two guys?
Gurley plays early, Nwuba plays late, and I kind of think Bona is going to play today, but I don't have that information. So if you want to take a risk and hope Bona sits, Nwuba is the beneficiary. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't have any players to swap to if you do that.
If Bona plays, how buried is he?
He's going to play 8 minutes.
Okay, so pretty buried. Yeah, there you go. That's the thing that we have to wrestle with here. Or I almost said Oregon, but that's not it. It's Oral Roberts versus Duke, 146-point total. We've seen Oral Roberts. They're a darling. They've got an alpha. They're taking on a team that's playing great basketball, though. But let's start with the Oral Roberts side with Abnus. I can never pronounce this guy's name. He's almost $10,000, and I should learn it considering he's single-handedly winning them tournament games in the past. What do you do with one of the best scorers in the country?
It's pronounced Asmus for some reason.
See, I can't do that. I'm just going to call him Max.
And I'm not the pronunciation guy.
I'm
the only reason I know that is from the show 2 years ago. We did. Chat called me out when they had the Ohio State game. Anyway, that's not here nor there, but I got called out 2 years ago. It's the only reason why I know. I wish Oral drew a better matchup here. I think they're live for like the Sweet 16, but you couldn't really draw up a worse matchup than Duke for this team. Awesome length for the Blue Devils. They defend really well. They're 24th in three-point defense. That's what Oral Roberts tries to do, shoot over the top. And Asmus can do that, 9,900. The usage is there to use him as a contrarian pivot off Filkowski, Tabellis, Chris Murray, but you do with less double-double upside. I'd rather play a forward. Connor Vanover, he's 7'5" Arkansas transfer. More talent than your typical mid-major big man, but he's going against Lively, Filkowski. Very difficult matchup for him. And he doesn't shoot. He has to get there with rebounds and blocks. Less likely to do that in a matchup against other talented bigs. And so much of the usage goes through them that I don't have any interest in Jurgens or McBride or Thompson.
I mean, in this game, again, I know it's more on the betting side. Like, it doesn't seem like there's huge blowout risk. It seems like everyone will play to their minutes projections. Is there a lot of variance in this game? I mean, where does it fall in the middle of the pack? 16 of these bad boys, and this is one with a pretty healthy total.
Yeah, love the Duke side. Filipkowski is one of my favorite studs. I think he's right up there with Tabellis and Chris Murray for the same reasons. I mean, he has the same double-double block equity as the other big men, the other guys that are in blowouts, but he himself doesn't have the blowout risk. He's going to play 35 minutes here. And then this team, they rotate a little bit, but you have seen some minute consolidation. Derek Lively is playing 25 to 29 minutes a game, 7-footer with immense block upside. We've seen him with like 7 blocks in a game. He should be in play for tournaments. Mark Mitchell's playing at least 27 minutes, and he's probably going to get like 31 here. Good rebound rate for him, good shot rate. He exploits defenses across the board. He's 5,600. He's a guy I prioritize in tournaments. I definitely want pieces of him and this Duke side. Then you've got Proctor and Roach, the two guards. They're going to play 38 minutes apiece. So Duke has great pieces. Love this team for tournaments. I think they're going to be under-owned.
Another dangerous, you mentioned that you thought that, Princeton could do some things maybe to cause some problems. Well, Colgate can definitely do some things to cause some problems because they shoot crazy amounts of threes and they make a lot of them. And they're 13-point underdogs taking on Texas 150.5. This Colgate team, it's experienced. We've seen them in the tournament. Richardson and co are players. They're guard heavy at times. How do you prioritize who you want to target from Colgate, or do you not want to target Colgate?
I don't think I do. If I did, it would be Tucker Richardson, 20% shot rate, 27% rebound rate, 46.5% assist rate. Now that I'm reading those rates, I think I might go and try to bump him a little bit. Holy smokes, these rates are incredible. This game has a good total. And Texas is super volatile. They don't shoot well. They're 180th in three-point percentage. Colgate is number 1. I don't know how Texas keeps getting these like mid-major matchups that are kind of nightmares for them, but this is by no means an easy one. for DFS purposes, it's just hard to get to. You have a really tight distribution of minutes, but everyone's priced efficiently. Even the value guy, Oliver Lynch Daniels, plays mid-30s in minutes, but all he does is shoot. You have no peripherals. So if he doesn't hit a couple threes, he's not hitting value. It's kind of a Richardson or pass for me on the Colgate side.
Okay, fair enough. And yeah, this is not a good matchup. They still should out-talent him, but different than Abilene Christian, who knocked off Texas, but the same type of team that you wouldn't want to face because they do some things extremely well that make variance high. But on this Texas team, I mean, Marcus Carr is a player. When he gets going, watch out. You've got Rice, you've got Allen and Bishop. I want to ask you about the status of Allen, and then just who else do you want to target here?
Allen sat up as a precaution in the Big 12 tournament, should be full go here. Full go for him is like 29 to 30 minutes. And this is similar to the Illinois situation where him being out drove up the price of Serge Jabari and Dylan Dessou. It makes those guys really hard to play because now they're going to drop back at least to some degree. Even if you got Allen at like 24 minutes, that affects Serge Jabari and Dylan Dessou and makes them significantly lower projected compared to their price. The one guy it doesn't affect is Marcus Carr. For whatever reason, his price has kind of been stationary the whole season. He plays every single minute, elite shot rate and assist rate. He's the facilitator of the entire offense. This is an immense team total for them. Marcus Carr is my favorite spend guard. It's not even really close. And the only other player I think you could look at here is Tyrese Hunter, also kind of unaffected by Timmy Allen. He plays upper 20s in minutes. He's not a big usage guy, but as an attachment to a Texas team with a good team total here, I think he's one of the more secure value plays.
Carr for cash?
Carr for cash, yes.
Boise State Northwestern, 7-10, ugly game, 127.5. Close spread, but I don't know about these teams. Northwestern plays extreme defense and extremely bad offense. So for Rice and Shaver and these guys, is this just bad matchup and it renders them useless? Or is there something from Boise we should talk about?
There's a value play maybe. And whenever I'm talking about these bad games and value plays, it just mainly speaks to the bad value on the entire slate. So a guy like Chibuzo Agbo is someone you could use today for the minutes just because of how weak the value plays are. He's 4,800. He's going to play 34-ish minutes here. 19% shot rate last three. Decent rebounder, decent peripherals. That could be enough. Like if he just outperforms the guys on, I don't know, Howard, that could be enough here. So he's somewhat interesting. Even for like contrarian spends here, like Marcus Shaver, I don't think I'm going to get there because the game is so bad overall. Two bad offenses, two elite defenses, two slow teams. It's probably just Agbo for Boise. And in the same vein, you've got like Robbie Barron and Ty Berry for Northwestern. Again, I don't love these players, but they're just sub 5K and they play a lot of minutes. And that literally could be enough today.
Anything on for Northwestern, Boo Buie? I mean, they're just at times so bad offensively, but it is somewhat concentrated in my opinion. What do you make of them?
Yeah, Bowie is the ultimate, like 2 of 15 shooter. Incredible shot rate, horrible shot percentage, decent peripherals. The Chase Audige is the player I'd rather get than Bowie. He just does more in the peripheries. The team's best defender, so you have like more steals upside, peripheral upside with Audige, and he's 7K rather than 8K, but I don't want to sound like I'm making the case for playing Audige. I don't want anyone at Northwestern if they're not a value play.
Fair enough. Yeah, again, a competitive game. And I will say we got a couple games left. We're going to breeze through them, no problem. All the information that Matt's referencing, all the stuff that he puts together, it is part of the March Madness package. So if you're on the DFS side and you're looking for projections, if you're looking for use of data sheets, all that type of stuff, it is absolutely available. You can purchase it right on Stochastic. I'll drop the link. I've got it handy right in chat as well. It's in the link in the description. Just a great opportunity. Yeah, it's and Arnold, does Bet365 require a promo code to be eligible for the credits to open an account? Just go to the link in the description here. You press show more and click that link right there. You will be good to go, friend. Just got to follow those terms and conditions. But welcome aboard and welcome to Bet365. And again, pair it up with the free trial at OddsShopper Premium. No reason not to do that. But Northern Kentucky. All right, my boys, they made the tournament. Now they got to play Houston. I assume they get the Bowling Green treatment from college football where there's nobody on the North, even Warwick, who's a damn good player, that can deal with Houston's defense.
I would recommend Xing out this team for your player pool so you don't accidentally end up with one in your lineup.
Oh, tell me something now. More importantly than that, on the Houston side, what do you do with Sasser? Because he didn't play against Memphis. He did warm up. I saw it with my own eyes. What do we do here now?
I'm not going to be playing him, just so close to the other studs. Don't really see the need to take on the risk, but if he plays full minutes and he's fully healthy, he has the upside to get there. I think the real thing here is, if they decide to hold him out for whatever reason, Terrence Arcino is going to play 34 minutes. That's really the only thing. You've got late swappability with him. So I'm still probably not going to do it. Like, once you put him in your lineup, you're really limiting. I guess there is a swap on Tennessee you could get to. Like, one strategy you could take with Houston is leave one value piece open later in the day, slot in whoever you want, Arcino, Meshack, or I guess Nwuba for UCLA. That was a suggestion in chat. And then just see what happens with these late games. Maybe you just pivot to Meshack and that's that. But maybe some value opens up, but I don't really see it. I think the Houston guys are all capped in minutes.
Yeah, and 121.5 point total tells the story there as well. Significantly lower than the majority of games. We did just get a super chat from RaceFan22. Appreciate that. 6,900 left on DK for a utility spot. So if you were left in that proposition, if you had just under 7K, who would you be looking to get to? Would it be Mark or Grady Dick or someone we haven't talked about yet?
What's the number we can use?
6,900. You got Rice there as well. Ajij. No, you can't use him.
Dick is the highest projected player at that price.
Okay.
And I'm fine with Dick. If you're worried about the minutes, Max Shulga would give you a little bit of salary. Maybe you could pivot up somewhere else. He's more secure, but Dick has the highest projection of that group.
Lafayette and Tennessee. 136 point total. Vol's rightful favorite. A lot of people are saying this could be close. I'm not sure I really see that, but talk to me about Louisiana. If they cause problems, who's going to do it?
Jordan Brown. Huge usage rate. I'm not going to be getting there at the price against Tennessee and the team total being really low. He also doesn't project well. Like sometimes I'll try to like manually override when I see someone in a really tough matchup. And a lot of times it bites me, but that's not even the case here. He doesn't project as well as the other studs. So no harm, no foul. If you're not playing him, maybe theme is Fulks, but I can tell you with all honesty, I have 0 players from Louisiana Lafayette in any of my lineups.
Tough scene. And we know Tennessee's 3-point defense was like off the charts good all year. Obviously, at times it regressed, but they're a damn good team. But let's talk about Tennessee because they did have some serious stuff to deal with late in the year with Ziegler going out. Vescovi's there, James is there. What does this offense look like now going into the tournament, and who is the guy that we want to target?
Vescovi is the usage leader now. He's almost like a 15% usage player across the board with spikes in shot rate and assist rate. I think he's fine as a contrarian guy. I don't think a lot of people are going to play him. No issues with him whatsoever. Josiah Jordan-James is somebody you could look at. If you were telling me he sees his normal minutes like 32, he should probably be 7K. But he hasn't been healthy, and he's kind of been bouncing between like 22 to 30 minutes with really no rhyme or reason. Some of the games he's played like 22 minutes, no fouls, tight games, just no explanation other than he still might be dealing with a lingering injury. The value pieces are interesting here. Jemai Meshack at 4,100 played 31 minutes in the last game. The 2 prior games, he was at 19 and 13 minutes. One of those games he fouled out, and the other game, he's a complete bonehead on the court, just went out there and immediately like caused some turnovers and played like a moron, which is kind of his game. Super athletic, ton of upside, but just fully does not understand the game yet. You're running a risk with him. But I think Meshack is one of these guys with a lot of upside among the value pieces. So he's a guy I'm going to be overweight to the field on. Tyreek Key is also in that range, mid to 20, upper 20 minutes for him. Not good best rates, but I mean, we're talking about a really thin value slate. So you got to make tough choices down here.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of those guys, Meshack, like 30 plus minutes in some of these scenarios in recent games. I totally get it. All right, we got 2 games left. Some interesting games nonetheless. Penn State and Texas A&M, 2.5 point spread. A&M is the favorite. I do kind of like them in the game. Again, 135 point total. Pickett. It starts with Pickett. Does it end with Pickett? I don't know. You're going to tell me. He's 10,100. He's a monster. Usage rates can Texas A&M slow him down, or is this the guy that we want to build around?
I think they can. And if nothing else, I think other players could outscore him just in better games. Overall, 66.5 total is not what you want. Texas A&M plays good defense. They defend guards well. And what Texas A&M does is their defense will allow you to shoot threes. A lot of times, like Pickett's the guy like creating the open shooter. He's not the guy who's actually like taking the open shot. I mean, he has a great shot rate and he shoots in a lot of different ways. I guess for DFS to sum this up, his rates are so good across the board. He should be used as a contrarian spend. No issues with that. But I would still rather get some of the other guys we talked about. And then like Lundy, Funk, Winter. Some of these guys popped in some lineups. I got a little bit of Funk at 4,900. Pretty good rates for him. And he's one of these consistent value plays. Like you're not really worried about him getting minutes. So if you want safety for value, he's in that range. I think a little less upside, but no real issues with him. And then for A&M, they played the 3 guards. Wade Taylor's going to be interesting as a contrarian guard. Radford Dennis kind of just priced out with their team total being so low. Kind of an ugly game environment. They play the forward merry-go-round, so no consistency there. Yeah, it's kind of just these spend contrarian guards or pass.
Do you have any interest in putting Pickett together with a guy like Funk, who obviously is going to draw a lot from just making his threes?
No, just because of the game.
Yeah, fair enough. And we'll get actually, you know what, we'll talk about this right to sum it up at the end. Let's get to the last game, and then we'll take a couple questions and we'll bounce on out of here. Of course, if you're enjoying this, you're going to see us again tomorrow. We're doing the same thing. And if you have any questions throughout the day, I know this man responds. You're always very good about that. Matt Gajewski on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. You can follow me at JazzRazDFS. Come join us there. Join us on OddsShopper. Join us here. Just be part of the community here at Stokastic. We're building it, and you guys are the reason we want to do it. A lot of support for our college basketball product this year, and we appreciate it. This last game is supposed to be pretty lopsided. 17.5 point spread, 136 point total. I saw a little Asheville in the tournament. Pember is a one-man wrecking crew. He's obviously a big step up, but does this guy, I mean, he jumps off the page, but he's not playing Campbell today. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, he's a Tennessee transfer, so he's not some like slouch out there. Obviously, he had to leave for a reason, but his rates are unbelievable. And this is a semi-close spread, and like Pember's been in some games like this before. He plays every minute. He has a 30% shot rate and a 32% rebound rate. These are the best rates on the entire slate, without a doubt, and the best minutes on the entire slate. His floor is probably like 30 points here with his ceiling, even if they get slaughtered. And I don't know if them getting slaughtered is necessarily the worst thing. Like getting Pember against the UCLA second team is not really something to worry about. And then you also have the Adam Bona injury. That's where Pember is going to play, is on the inside. So locked in cash for tournaments. There's a lot of merit to fading him. I mean, there's a ton of studs on this slate, but Pember overall, I think he's just the single best projected play on the entire board.
Interesting. And then how big is the drop off to the second Asheville player?
Pretty big. I would not prioritize Tajion Jones, but his rates are pretty good too, and he also plays every single minute. But 7,200, I'd rather just find a way to Pember at 8K.
Tiger Campbell, Bailey, Jaime Jaquez. I mean, we know what this team's going to do. Who are these guys on UCLA that stand out, or do we not want exposure to them?
David Singleton at 4,800, I think, is the safest value play on the slate. Playing David Singleton for sure. And then Jaquez and Tiger are interesting contrarian spends.
Singleton cash viable at that price point?
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a minutes thing? I mean, it looks like he's pushing mid-30s.
Exactly.
Okay. I want to ask you, because Jaime Jaquez is 9,500 as well. We talked about, a handful of those guys. Do you anticipate having any lineups that jam like Tabellis and Miller? Tabellis and like two north of 9,000 guys together.
A lot of lineups like that, but
okay.
It's generally Tabellis with Chris Murray with Filipkowski. I include Marcus Carr kind of in that range, but I'm trying to get players that are a little more secure with their minutes, if that makes sense.
So, yeah, I mean, overall, I know you can't just put it into two buckets, but like, do you see yourself more in like a quote unquote stars and scrubs where you're attacking a couple punts, or is it more like attacking the 6-7K range in a balanced build?
I'm more stars and scrubs, honestly, but you can't go too cheap is the way I'll put it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No. That absolutely makes sense. It's just with 16 games and so many guys, and you mentioned the tight pricing, it can be very, very difficult for the lineup construction. And then, we have like 1 or 2 minutes and we'll get out of here. But I do want to just ask you, how many lineups are you building with the anticipation that things from Houston with Sasser, with Bona can change your lineups, or are you pretty content with what you have? How big of those pieces in terms of dominoes should people expect if we get that news?
I think they're both going to play.
Okay. I kind of do too. I think Sasser is going to play. It's just not going to be a full allotment of minutes because they don't need him.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's the worst case scenario.
Yes.
Like we either want full go Sasser or no Sasser. Sasser with like 25 minutes is just, it's the worst case scenario.
If we get word that Sasser is going to play, will you sprinkle him for tournaments?
No.
Okay. All right. So he's unplayable in your opinion.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Michael Peterson says Pember, Filipowski, and Tabellis. Yeah, I think those are, I mean, I know you're in love with all three of them. You listed them. Some of the best spends up. And it seems like all the good spends for the most part are in the front court. Is that a fair assessment? I mean, Asmus, Pickett, Wade Taylor, it seems like the front court is where you're going to allocate most of your salary.
Yeah. 3 wagons.
Wagons, man. Any final thought? Look at that. 16 up, 16 down. We got to talk about Bet365. We got to talk about the March Madness package. And of course, we talked about Odd Shopper Premium. All the links are in the descriptions below. You can get your free trial for the full week, 100% free. Just click that link and you're in a second. Arkansas winning it all. That is a hot take. And that's why it came from a man whose name is Opinion 808. I don't think that's the answer. Who is winning it all? Last thing for you. Put you on the spot. Alabama.
Bama. I've been trying to pick Bama for years now, going all the way back to our good old friend Herb Jones. And then he fouled out immediately against UCLA, who was a playing team that year. And I was very sad.
I remember it. I remember it like it was yesterday, but friends, we're going to go watch these games for everyone in the brackets, for everyone in the betting world, and for everyone in the DFS world. Great. Good luck. Enjoy the games. And of course, hit that like button on your way out. Me and Matt appreciate you. For Mike behind the glass as well, the third member of the team. Let's have a great day. Enjoy it. Try to steal it, whether you're at work or at home. Try to sneak away and watch these games. It's absolutely worth it. And come back tomorrow to break down more college basketball here at Stochastic. Until then, everyone, good luck, enjoy, and we'll see you then.